The sun beat down on their faces. The air was thick with the smell of pine needles. 5 friends, giddy with excitement, shouldered their backpacks. They were ready for a weekend adventure. This wasn't just any hiking trip. They were venturing deep into Redwood National Park. Their destination? A rumored hidden grove untouched by man. The trail started off well marked. Sunlight dappled through the towering redwoods. The friends laughed and joked, their voices echoing in the stillness. As they ventured deeper, the trail grew fainter. The light began to dim, swallowed by the dense canopy above. An unsettling silence settled over them. John, the self-proclaimed leader, consulted the map. "Just a bit further," he assured the group. His voice sounded unnaturally loud in the hushed woods. They pressed on, a growing unease settling in their stomachs. The air grew noticeably colder despite the summer sun. A sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air. The trees seemed to close in around them, their branches intertwined overhead, forming a tangled, impenetrable ceiling. The air grew thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. The friends' laughter died down, replaced by the crunch of their boots on the forest floor. They were surrounded by a sea of green, the towering redwoods like ancient sentinels. The silence was broken only by the occasional chirp of a bird. Even that sound seemed strained, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. Emily, usually the chattiest of the group, shivered and pulled her jacket tighter around her. The trail, barely visible now, led them deeper into the woods. The sun, once a welcome companion, was now a distant memory. An unnatural twilight enveloped them, casting long, distorted shadows that danced at the edge of their vision. A low mist began to rise from the forest floor, swirling around their ankles like phantom fingers. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves above. It carried a strange, unsettling sound, a low, mournful howl that seemed to echo through the trees. John stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes scanning the woods nervously. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice tight with apprehension. The others exchanged uneasy glances. "Hear what?" asked Sarah, her voice barely a whisper. "That sound?" John replied, his eyes darting from tree to tree. "It sounded like an animal, but—" Before he could finish his sentence, the howl came again. Closer this time, and filled with a chilling sorrow that sent shivers down their spines. They huddled closer, their packs suddenly feeling heavy on their backs. The wind seemed to carry the scent of something wild and untamed, something ancient and powerful. David, the jokester of the group, tried to lighten the mood. "Probably just a bear," he said, forcing a laugh. But his voice wavered, betraying his bravado. The forest seemed to press in on them, the silence broken only by the pounding of their own hearts. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent a jolt of fear through their bodies. They continued on, their pace quickening, desperation fueling their steps. They just wanted to get away from that sound, from the feeling of being watched. Then Mark, who was trailing at the back of the group, stumbled back with a gasp. His eyes were wide with terror, his face drained of all colour. "What is it, Mark?" hissed Emily, her voice shaky. Mark just pointed, his hand trembling, towards a towering redwood. There, nestled amongst the branches, was a pair of eyes. Not the beady eyes of a squirrel or the reflective gaze of a deer. These eyes were different. They were human-like, filled with an ancient intelligence that seemed to pierce through them into their very souls. The eyes blinked slowly, then disappeared into the shadows of the forest. They ran then, fear lending speed to their steps. They didn't care about the trail, about their destination. All they wanted was to escape the feeling of dread that clung to them like a shroud. Branches whipped at their faces, tore at their clothes, but they didn't slow down. They couldn't slow down. John, leading the charge, burst into a small clearing. He skidded to a halt, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The others stumbled in behind him, their faces pale and streaked with sweat. But their relief was short-lived. The clearing was not empty. In the center stood a circle of ancient stones, half hidden by moss and creeping vines. Carved into the surface of the stones were strange symbols, unlike anything they had ever seen before. The air in the clearing felt heavy, oppressive. It hummed with an unseen energy that made the hair on their arms stand on end. As they approached the stone circle, drawn by a morbid curiosity, the symbols seemed to writhe and twist before their eyes. They depicted strange creatures, part man, part beast, with antlers that branched like the trees themselves. And at the center of each stone was a single recurring image, a pair of eyes, human eyes. A low growl rumbled through the clearing, seeming to emanate from the very earth itself. The ground beneath their feet vibrated with a deep guttural sound. The hikers froze, their blood turning to ice in their veins. From the shadows of the forest, a creature emerged. It was an elk, but unlike any they had ever seen before. Its coat was the color of moss and shadow. Its eyes were those of a man, filled with an ancient wisdom and a chilling emptiness. And its antlers were a tangled mass of branches, leaves and bone, twisting and turning like the forest itself. It was the guardian of the grove. Panic seized them. They turned to flee, but the creature was upon them in a flash. Its speed was unnatural, defying the bulk of its form. They scattered, their backpacks and supplies falling forgotten to the forest floor. The air was filled with their screams, their pleas for mercy swallowed by the dense trees. John, his heart pounding in his chest, scrambled behind a fallen log, his breath catching in his throat. He could hear the creature moving through the undergrowth, its heavy hooves thudding against the forest floor. He squeezed his eyes shut, praying for a miracle. He heard a blood-curdling scream, followed by an eerie silence. He dared to open his eyes, his blood running cold at the sight before him. Emily lay sprawled on the forest floor, her eyes staring vacantly at the sky. Her body was broken, twisted at an unnatural angle. And standing over her, its antlers dripping with a viscous fluid that steamed in the cool air, was the guardian. John knew he had to escape. He had to get help. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the searing pain in his leg, and ran. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he couldn't stay here. He dodged between trees, his lungs burning, his legs screaming for respite. But the image of Emily, her lifeless eyes staring up at him, spurred him on. He stumbled into another clearing, this one smaller, more secluded. In the center stood a single weathered stone. Carved into its surface were the same strange symbols he had seen before. As he approached the stone, his hand drawn to the rough surface, the symbols seemed to glow with an eerie light. He traced the lines of the carvings with trembling fingers. They spoke of a time long past, of a forest ancient and powerful. They spoke of a guardian, protector of the sacred grove, punisher of trespassers, and they spoke of a price. A blood price for those who dared to defile the sacred ground. John sank to his knees, despair washing over him like a tidal wave. He was trapped. The forest had claimed his friends, and now it was coming for him. He could hear the creature moving closer, its mournful howl echoing through the trees. The air grew colder, the shadows around him deepening. He closed his eyes, accepting his fate. He had been a fool to come here, to think he could conquer this ancient place. The forest was not meant for men. It was a place of power, of magic, of ancient, primal forces that he could not begin to comprehend. He felt a presence looming over him. He opened his eyes to see the creature standing before him, its antlers silhouetted against the dying light. Its eyes, those human eyes, seemed to bore into his soul, judging him, weighing him. And then, with a sound that was both a sigh and a growl, the creature lowered its head. Search parties scoured the woods for weeks, their calls echoing through the silent trees. They found no trace of the missing hikers, no sign of their passage. The forest had swallowed them whole, leaving behind only a deafening silence. The official report concluded that the hikers had gotten lost, succumbed to the elements, their bodies never recovered. But deep in the heart of the national park, hidden by a veil of mist and shadow, the truth remained. Marked by a circle of ancient stones and a single weathered headstone lay a secret guarded by a creature as old as the forest itself. No name marked the grave, only a single inscription, a chilling reminder of the forest's claim: here lies the price of trespass. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the mournful howl of the guardian, a sound both sorrowful and menacing. The forest had claimed its due, and it would continue to do so for as long as the ancient trees stood tall. The sun, a pale ghost behind the dense canopy, cast long, eerie shadows across the forest floor. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. A sense of watchful stillness permeated the ancient grove, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the occasional snap of a twig. Deep within the heart of the national park, hidden from human eyes and forgotten by time, the guardian still roamed. Its moss-covered coat blended seamlessly with the shadows, its human eyes reflecting an ancient wisdom and a chilling emptiness. The forest held its secrets close, guarding them jealously from those who dared to intrude. The ancient pact remained unbroken. The forest, in its timeless wisdom, ensured its own survival, claiming those who dared to disregard its power. The guardian, a silent sentinel, stood watch, its mournful howl a chilling reminder. Some places are meant to remain untouched, forever wild, forever feared. If you liked this video, like it and subscribe to my channel.